Okay, so we have to talk about oil and how it's about to affect the entire world because I think we're being lied to.
Somebody shorted the oil market today by hundreds of millions of dollars exactly 20 minutes before Trump made his announcement that everything was going to be great. And if you see that once, it could be a coincidence. But that's happened at least 3 times, if not more, since the war began. That's a pattern.
The theory is that all of this back and forth about the strait is open, the strait is closed, well then it's open, and now it's closed again, it's actually really easy to explain. It's a way for insiders to manipulate the stock markets. Because last Friday, we were told the Strait of Hormuz was finally open, which is a huge reason why the price of paper oil went way down and the markets rallied to a new all-time high. Only to find out that over the weekend, that's not the case at all. And the strait is still very much closed. And maps are showing a lot of the ships were being routed back, and now no ships are allowed to pass. Now, there's also a lot of really weird things starting to happen as well. Like, for example, there seems to be a virus that's infecting the world's gas infrastructure. There are now dozens and dozens of energy pipelines that have caught fire or accidentally exploded. And this dates all the way back from March of this year, and it's happening all across the world. And because all of this flow of energy is not allowed to move freely, there are now warnings that the world is about to go through a really bad recession.
The International Monetary Fund is warning of a worldwide recession if the war in the Middle East doesn't end soon. If the conflict drags on, the IMF says energy and food prices will spike higher, stunting economic growth across the globe.
Now hold on, maybe everything will be fine for the US, right? Because we're told that the US is a net exporter of oil. But the reality is that the United States actually imports more crude oil than it exports, and here's the math. We bring in about 6.3 million barrels a day and send out about 4.1 million. That makes us a net importer, aka consumer, of 2.2 million barrels a day. You can't be a net importer of something and also be the world's supplier of it. That math just doesn't make sense. And all of this confusion about how much we actually have or don't have is exactly why the price of oil is 2 completely different numbers depending on where you look. One of those numbers is the paper price. The other is the price oil actually costs in the real world if a country needs a barrel delivered to it today. And the gap between those 2 numbers is about $35, which is the biggest spread ever recorded in history.
When we talk about commodities, there is a huge difference between what you see on the screen and how much you pay to get that commodity. So you see the screen, $90 a barrel. Good luck if you get an oil barrel for $90. It's $120, $130, $140, $150, $160 even.
The paper price of oil is what's called Brent futures. That's sitting at around $100 a barrel. If you Google what oil is worth right now, that is the number you're going to be shown. But the physical price, which is what it actually costs to buy a real barrel of oil that gets put onto a real ship and delivered to a real refinery, that costs over $130, depending on the day. That is called dated Brent, which is oil for actual physical delivery 10 to 30 days in the future. Now the question is, why does this gap exist and what does it mean? And the reason the gap exists is because the people who need actual oil right now are paying whatever it takes to get it. But the paper market is still pretending everything is fine. How come? The theory is that it's because the paper markets are being used as a mechanism to suppress the price of oil psychologically to calm the markets down. Here's a chart from JP Morgan. It shows that spread going back to 2008. And for almost 20 years, those 2 prices, paper oil and physical oil, basically moved together. They were maybe $1 or $2 apart, maybe $5 in a crisis, but the gap right now is way outside of anything we've ever seen. And the last time something even close to this happened was during COVID, when oil went negative for a very short time, but that's what economists called a demand collapse when nobody was buying anything because nobody was traveling. This is the opposite. This is a supply emergency. Now, unfortunately, peace talks and negotiations have failed, which means the war is technically not over. But the White House is taking a victory lap, and the stock market is coming back up. We're told everything is going to be fine, and the US just became the world's gas station again. But the data is telling us something is going very wrong, and I think the worst of it probably hasn't hit us at the gas pump yet. The effects are starting to be felt in different parts of the world, but not in the US yet. So in this video, I want to help explain exactly what I think is going on and when all of this actually starts to affect us at the gas pump and in the stock market. So with that said, let's get into it. Hi, my name is Andre Jick. Hope you're doing well. Come for the finance and stay for the world when it's your turn to be an adult. Do you remember watching Interstellar when they landed on that one planet and they were like, oh look, mountains. But it turned out those weren't mountains. It was a giant tsunami. That's kind of how I'm seeing the world right now. The effect of this war has sort of been set in motion, and we're looking around and we're seeing the mountains, and the market seems fine, and oil is not that much more expensive, but on the horizon, something is coming. What is that something, and when is it getting here? So there's a couple questions I'm trying to understand. Like, how bad is the oil shortage right now? Which parts of the world are going to feel it first? And what's happening in the global bond market? And how will this affect the investment markets, if at all? Because the stock market seems to be doing just fine. Okay, let's start with how much oil is now missing. So all of this, of course, goes back to the Strait of Hormuz, where a fifth of the whole world's oil and gas used to go through every single day. And remember, oil is not just gasoline. Oil is how food gets to resorts. It's how planes fly and ships move and fertilizer gets produced, right? And plastics get made. Oil is the plumbing system of the whole economy. And so the question is, how much oil is now missing and how much does the world need? Turns out, the world uses about 100 million barrels of oil every single day. That's at full capacity. What's missing right now is somewhere between 8 to 13 million barrels of that per day. That doesn't sound like much, but it's a lot. Context. The United States uses about 20 million barrels a day. So we're talking about losing the equivalent of half of America's daily oil use.